welcome to Open Mic Gripe Live with myself, Jay Van Rye, my co-host Jeff Ree. This is a weekly radio show where serious and silly complaints come to chat.
Open Mic Gripe is a live call-in show dedicated to hearing your gripes, grievances, and opinions on any and all topics.
If you feel like we are wrong, inappropriate, or biased, and let's be honest, you likely will, then call in to 701-478-4959 or direct message us during the show on our Facebook page.
So jump on in and gripe on the Open Mic with Jay Van Rye and Jeff Ree.
Perpetude.
Lotion.
Skin.
Hawk.
A giant.
We got it.
Got it? All right.
Good one.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back out to Open Mic Gripe Live.
Welcome. We're on the air this week.
Yes, we are. As we are every week.
As we are every week from 6 until 7 p.m. or whenever we decide to finish.
That is correct. Yeah, that's right. We can, we might be having an extended show from now on. So.
I like that. We've had a few requests to go a little bit longer than an hour, and honestly, I couldn't disagree. I feel like these conversations go very quickly.
Of course. I mean, how could I disagree with somebody that wants to hear me more?
Well, also, the time in the studio with Jay is not always unpleasant. At times, it can even be charming.
Wow. I mean, you're complimenting me today. That's surprising.
Hard to believe.
It'd be more surprising if I was complimenting you.
Well, I guess I have to earn that one.
That's true, you do.
All right, Jay, I want to introduce our guest, in the studio this week.
You know what? Before we do that,
right.
not that this isn't very important, but in case we are going to be having a very interesting conversation today, and of course, if anybody wants to join the conversation, and since we do have a guest in, we would like to try to, if you have any gripes, we want you to try to keep them within the context of the conversation that we are having. So please do that. And so, of course, we are 95.9 KRFF LP, Moorhead, Fargo. If you would like to contact us at the station, go ahead and call us at 701-478-4959.
Yep, and just remember, this is live radio, so let's keep our indoor language.
Yeah, basically, if you swear, we realize even if it is a mistake, we're cutting you off.
Yeah.
We just have to do that just to make sure that things don't get out of hand. And please don't call in just to cut off.
All right, so this week our special guest is Rebel. Rebel is an organizer and outreach person for the tri-state trans community, and I'm actually been looking forward to this conversation because, to be honest, I'm wholly ignorant about it, and I think I can learn something.
Okay.
So,
Excellent.
Rebel, welcome.
Hi.
Hey. So, can you tell us a little bit about tri-state trans, and what is it? What does it do?
Tri-State Transgender is a community here in Fargo that is an outreach program for transgender people to go to and, relax and be themselves and talk about, the current events and, needs that need to be met, as well as, some of the experiences that they've had and, also talking about safe places and dangerous places and things of that nature. Basically, it's a community for supporting transgender individuals.
So you say some dangerous places. Where do you need to stay out of in Fargo if you're a transgender person?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head because I'm not the Fargo outreach person. I kind of more in the rural area. I haven't heard of too many bad experiences within the city. Specifically, but I've heard of some people, some of our members have been hurt or, punched or beaten up for the sole fact that they are different than, the mainstream society.
Right.
Oh, wow. I think when it comes to this issue, I wouldn't have the first idea of where to look. Where do you find information about this?
Internet.
The internet, right. Well, I mean, can you just Google Tri-State Trans?
You can Google the Tri-State Transgender. They have a very nice Wikipedia that some of the members have been working on. If you go on there, you should see names like Faye and Erica. Both those two are outreach people here within Fargo. There's more information on there that I know than off the top of my head.
Okay, so that's tristatetrans.org, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there.
Yes, and then there's a Facebook page too as well. So if you're a Facebooker, you can go that route as well.
Hey, you be careful what you call me. Now, Jay, let me ask you a question. When did you first become aware about the trans community?
The trans community, actually, it would have been when I was a professor. Was it a professor advisor? Is it a professor as an advisor for certain groups, right?
Really?
Yeah, it was actually when I was the advisor for the Safe Place. No, it was Straight Gay Alliance in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Okay. And what was why did you have the initiative to participate with that?
Because I've always been one that's for human rights.
Okay.
And I ended up going to a lot of the meetings just to kind of see, because I've always been involved in any kind of human rights kind of issues. And they needed an advisor. So helped them out.
All right. Well, I suppose let's start with the basics just because I want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. This is an issue. Is this about sexuality or is this about gender?
This is about gender. Transgender individuals can start identifying as transgender as early as 3 or 5. There's a famous transgender girl, Jazz, who I believe she came out when she was 5, and that ended up on ABC News. And so that's way before sexuality is developing. So gender identity has very little to do with sexuality.
Okay.
So.
And how would you define sexuality as different then?
I guess gender I would kind of view as who you are, and sexuality is who you are attracted to.
Okay. That's excellent, because in my head I was just thinking that's kind of what I thought it was.
Oh, well, you just made Jay's job easier.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, I mean, okay, so this issue has really come out in the last 5 years or so to the public's eyes, and I'm sure if you're a member of this community, I'm sure this has been in your mind for a long time. But when have you noticed that attitudes have started changing?
I've noticed attitudes started changing not within the last 5 years, but more or less in the last 6 months, really. With Caitlyn Jenner winning the Arthur Ashby Award. That really, for the most part, I don't think the rural community out here in Fargo and rural North Dakota, rural South Dakota are interested in entertainment, but they are interested in ESPN. So this transgender individual, sat right in the middle of their, viewing, and they had a discussion about it. So.
Oh wow. And in fact, now, Rebel, can I ask, what do you identify as? I
identify as bigender, which is kind of gender fluidity. Sometimes I'm male, sometimes I'm female, kind of depending on the safe places and things of that nature. Just more or less where I am and, where I'm working, I guess. So.
Okay. See, now it's interesting because, you're saying in the last 6 months is when you've seen kind of a change. As soon as I found out you were going to be a guest, it was like that same night or the next day, Ruby Rose just had a lot of accolade for when she was hosting the Europe MVAs or some music video awards or something. But she came out and she said, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. And, of course, the internet went crazy. And, she's kind of become I think she was the unofficial spokesperson for kind of like the gender fluidity. And now maybe with this has kind of become maybe a little bit more official.
I'm glad you brought up Ruby Rose because she would be a model of someone who identifies as bigender or maybe gender fluid, as well as Miley Cyrus is another big name. I don't know too many bigender individuals off the top of my head. But yeah, it was really great seeing her do that and kind of give some voice to, the gender fluid community. So that was good.
Oh, I didn't know that Miley Cyrus was trans? No.
Bigender.
Okay.
So. Well, and I think that's what I think where a lot of people that are not biased or discriminatory against gender fluid people. Is that what and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I think a lot of people get scared with saying the wrong thing. you know, between because like transgendered or transsexual or even, and I know this is a derogatory term, or tranny. I mean, but people, I think, have a hard time knowing what they should say. Interesting. We have a phone call. Let's check this. Hold up. Hello, you are on Open Mic Gripe Live.
Hey.
Hello.
How's it going? Who are we speaking with?
John.
John, nice to meet you.
Hey, John.
I live in Fargo.
Excellent.
I just wanted to ask one quick question.
All right.
So given the recent more public view of the transgendered community, i.e. that it exists, because I feel like a lot of the public didn't know that until, like, recently.
Mm-hmm.
I've always, so LGBT has got the transgendered in there, but I've always sort of wondered, it looks like the gay rights movement has essentially achieved critical mass, and now it's becoming impolite in public to be a homophobe.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder about the transgender movement because I just don't think the numbers are there. And the only reason I see it coming together is because the internet allows people to. So I was just wondering if the guest could talk about, like, does he see as their wagon is already hitched to the lesbian and gay communities and that their rights are going to make it and you're going to be allowed to have a job if you're transgendered? Or do you think that there's going to be a further struggle and it's going to take another 10 or 20 years? So I'm going to get off the phone unless you.
Thank you for calling, John. We'll let Rebel answer that one first.
That was a great question, and I was trying to look up the name of the person who essentially started the Stonewall movement, and that was a transgender individual. Recently, they made a film, or making a film about Stonewall, and they've kind of written her off as kind of a side character, as someone who really hasn't put out their voice in and things of that nature. But yes, there is going to be a struggle for the transgender individuals. One of the things that I think is a little bit different about the LGBT, I think for a lot of people when they see a transgender person, they kind of, it's way more visual. Kind of when you suspect someone being gay or bisexual or lesbian, you don't go out and ask them, are you gay, bisexual?
Right, but of course you can tell who's gay just by looking at them, right?
Oh, it's so easy.
That was sarcasm.
No, this is interesting because I've intentionally tried to wade through some of this stuff in order to become a little bit more aware and hopefully a little less offensive, if possible, in the way I communicate these issues. And John was asking about how the gay community has reached critical mass in the public's eye. But so many of my bi friends tell me how easily dismissed the B in the LGBT movement is just
it's
cast out.
It's kind of like they're working across their initialization, like LGBT. Right now, the L and the G are okay. Like for the most part, like when he's talking about the critical mass, like people seem to be okay with it, but we got a lot of work to do with the B and the T.
Well, it sounds like a to-do list, or
I don't think that we're also 100% there with the gay and lesbian group as either. I think there is still a lot of infringements on their rights as well, and it's going to be a long road. Oh.
No, it's okay. Don't hit the table.
It's gonna be a long road, but we'll get there, and I'm very confident that we will. So.
Okay.
I mean, is there more of a separation? Is the trans or bigender community, are they trying to pull away from, because basically what you've already said is gender, like bigender or trans, that is an identity of who you are and not your sexuality of who you're attracted to, where obviously if you're gay and lesbian you identify as that, but that has a lot more to do with who you're attracted to. So are they trying to actually the community trying to pull away from being in the kind of sexuality area of gay and lesbians and trying to get more out onto your own in terms of gender?
Well, that's
Jeffrey's really impressed. I asked such a good question. He's just like staring at me wide-eyed. He's like, "Whoa."
I think the transgender community is proud to be a part of the LGBT, but we just want to make it clear that, this isn't a sexual thing. This is a gender thing. This is more about who we are. But when we talk about the LGBT, there are other acronyms that we're missing. We're missing the I, we're missing the A, we're missing the P, we're missing the other P, and now you're the Q and the other Q, and now you're probably wondering, what is this alphabet soup that I've just...
The other Q?
There's 2 Qs? Oh,
yeah.
no.
Wait, is it queer and questioning?
That is correct.
Interesting. Jake did his homework.
Yeah. And then A would be asexual, P would be pansexual, the other P would be polysexual, and then I would be intersex. And the intersex, that's a community of its own. I feel like... if I know Jeff well enough, I'm guessing that he has a question already lined up about that.
Oh, well, I
don't know what intersex is.
Before I became accustomed to the activist communities that are fighting so hard for recognition, my question was, in my ignorance, why the need for so many labels? Why can't we just all be on the sexual spectrum somewhere and get to know each other individually? And, of course, it's really important to validate who people are, and that's what I've come to learn. But, I think a lot of people have this question. Why do we even need so many letters? It is, as you said, the alphabet soup. Do you feel any frustration from the community in that regard?
I think if you're on the end of that chain, I think you get a little bit frustrated, and I wonder sometimes if you feel like your rights are being advocated for with the LGBT plus community, because they just sometimes write you off. But I'm fine with the LGBT plus, but what do I know? I'm not I'm not a P or a P or a Q or a Q. So
okay. And what can you help me understand the word queer a little bit better?
I cannot.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. That is never a word that I've identified with or a word that I've used often. I know that there are people out there who use that word and who identify as genderqueer and things of that nature. So
okay. So what kind of resistance have you found from the community around here?
Oh, well, actually, I feel kind of bad that I did miss this point when you...
I'm sorry, please.
Well, you were talking about, like, what kind of, aggressions that I've experienced. I haven't experienced much, but I have, people at Tri-State have talked about trying to find work while trans, and when the caller mentioned that too, trying to find work while trans is difficult. There are many trans people, that's one of their biggest problems, is that they're often unemployed or underemployed.
Okay. How does the trans lifestyle get in the way of employment?
The transgender lifestyle? I don't think I would refer to it as a transgender lifestyle.
Thank you for correcting me.
And it doesn't get in the way at all. If anything, for most part, people who are transgender, they're always on their brain. It's like, oh, I have to go home and dress. I'm going to take a day off of work and, present. I'm going to go to this long trip versus if you just let them be themselves, they're happy. They're willing to work for you. They're chomping at the bit. It really has no effect on the quality or the performance of the work, except perhaps even making it a little bit better. But in Fargo, there has been a couple of people who they haven't been outright fired for being trans, but, they've made the women's bathroom inaccessible or the men's bathroom inaccessible to them, or the locker room not allowing them to change in the locker room that they need to, things of that nature, which, if you can't get ready for work, you can't go to work. If you can't go to the bathroom, you're not going to perform well. So,
Okay. Well, and I really appreciate the correction on that one too, because thank you, Rebel, for pointing out that I don't have a full grasp of this concept, and more than anything, is I want to be corrected and certainly not put my foot in my mouth.
Yeah,
but
we
it's gonna
definitely
happen.
want to have a better understanding of what's going on. And then speaking of understanding, wait, what is intersex again?
Did we miss that topic?
I don't. Yeah, what is it? What is that?
Intersex would be someone who was born with either ambiguous genitalia or their chromosomes don't quite meet what XY or XX.
Okay. So there is a derogatory term for this, right? Is intersex people with both genitalia?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't use that other word. What word were you?
I know that, but I didn't know the other term for it. So intersex. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say hermaphrodite, and I know that actually is a derogatory term.
Yeah, because worms are hermaphroditic.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Because they're born hermaphroditic. Every worm you pick up is hermaphroditic, but intersex people aren't hermaphroditic.
They don't like, even though it is a scientific a scientific definition, they don't like being same as like little people. They don't like being called midgets, even though I believe like midget and dwarf, it was a scientific distinction between them, but they don't like being called it because they find it derogatory.
Well, hermaphroditic belongs to the biology of a worm, not to the biology of a person.
Oh, it's specifically to a worm?
Well, not specifically to a worm, but things of that nature. Right. So
okay.
So and I realize that I don't want to walk in eggshells because I hope you understand that I'm completely for this community and helping out in any way that I can. I was really thinking about intersex, like when you're when I found out we were going to have somebody that was bigender, because when I was reading up on bigender, it was talking about. Okay, let me just read part of this. Let's see. It says bigender, which can be literally translated as two genders or double gender. Exactly two gender identities, either simultaneously or varying between the two, and they could be male or female, but they could also include non-binary identities. Do you just want to explain that a little bit? Non-binary identities?
Well, first off, I want to back up a little bit to you walking on eggshells. I think you should ask. I don't think there is any harm in asking. I think it's necessary right now. I want you to ask. I would rather have you ask than try to assume. Just to throw out a reference out there, John Oliver did a really good piece on transgender issues, and he talked about, like, if you're confused about what you should say or what you should do, just ask. Yeah. And that one of my gripes, if I'm not getting too far ahead of myself,
go gripe on,
is when someone's being sincere and when someone comes up to you and like, I'm sorry, I don't know, can I ask you a question? And then they get crazy on you and like, oh, how dare you? Why do you think you can come over to me and ask me this question and things of that nature? But I guess it's a little bit different if you're walking down the street and someone has to stop you versus like if you're at work and someone wants to give you a paper or something of that nature. But
that makes sense.
But anyway, you're asking about the binary concept of whether or not okay, so you can be either male or female or something in between. One of the things that is growing, I'm not an expert on this, but intersex people, some of them are deciding not to pick a gender until they feel their gender. And they don't want to be labeled male or female until they know. So I kind of feel like that's the in-between. And then there's people who really don't feel male and they don't really feel female. They're kind of just, I could go either way. It doesn't bother me any. So then there's people who at one moment in time strongly identify as female. And when you see them, you recognize them as a female, and then they'll flip over and they'll be male and you recognize them as male.
See, now, and I realize that and I think that this is confusing for me, is when somebody identifies as both male or female, or so like I said, somewhere in between, I know a lot of times they can get body dysmorphia because their genitalia does not match what they want it to. Now, for somebody that identifies as two different genders, do you want both genitalia?
Body dysmorphia. I'm laughing at that term. It sounds like a Power Ranger move.
Isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it gender dysmorphia? Or
it's, body dysmorphia. Body dysmorphic order is something a little bit different. I'm not quite sure off the lingo, but yeah, gender dysphoria. And
yes.
That is not the sensation of being in the wrong gender. That is a sensation that of anxiety of this. That is, sorry, let me back up here a little bit. That is anxiety due to society's perception of how you are. So it's the fact that society is making you have anxiety, and that's what gender dysphoria is. It's not the fact that you feel like you're in the wrong body, because you know your gender. You know what gender you should be in.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to get back to you. Okay, I want to come back to you on this. Bigender people said may experience dysphoria, or which they want their body to reflect traits from two distinct sexes, right? Or experience dysphoria at some time, but not others.
Well, I'm going to take a moment just to say you're listening to Open Mic Gripe on KRFF. Feel free to give us a call and join the conversation. If you'd like to ask Rebel a question or talk to one of us, you can call us anytime at 701-478-4959.
Excellent.
Sorry for the interruption.
Plug there. Well, I guess how I would look at that is you might feel dysphoria at times when you are wanting to present female and you are in male mode, or vice versa, is how I would probably label that. But
And how does that come about? Like, I mean, do you wake up and it just kind of, I mean, and I don't want to make light of this, but I really don't know how to ask. It's like, do you wake up and you're like, I feel more female today, or I feel more male today, and then you get dressed, in that style?
I think that's a hard question to answer, because for every individual,
Right.
it's going to be different. I can only answer from my personal experience and things of that nature. For me, it's all about practicality. Like, if I present female, like, what hindrances will I have to face? Or if I present male, what hindrances will I have to face?
No, okay. Everything's okay. Everybody is okay with the LGBT, the B, the T, the A, the I, the Q, the other P.
The A, the O.
The A, the O. So that's okay. How would you then, if you didn't have to worry about what you're presenting, what would you do? Or like because you said that kind of decides kind of like how you're feeling. If you didn't have to worry about that, how would you identify?
If the community wasn't a factor.
Yeah,
Right.
if the community wasn't a factor. I guess I wouldn't really know, because I've never lived in that environment. That sounds like a pretty sterile environment that would be a fascinating scientific experiment to perform. So,
Well, I mean, both Jay and I have had the luxury of being able to travel to countries where gender is not so rigidly defined as it tends to be amongst the communities here in the United States, and it's interesting when you don't come from a very specific, Christian cultural background, or a very specific other religious cultural background where gender is not dichotomized. How that affects people's attitudes towards it. Have you ever looked into, say, how attitudes towards gender appear in Thailand or other countries?
yeah, it's actually kind of fascinating, because some religions and things of that nature really value people that are this kind of bigender or gender fluid or transgender identity, but the society that they live in, or the parliament society, or like the government themselves, don't always see eye to eye to that, and sometimes put them off, and as social outcasts or pariah, things of that nature. So it's interesting, but yeah, it's interesting to look at how the same person in the same country, in the same city, can be revered one moment and ostracized the next.
Okay.
And you do say that it would be an interesting experiment, but I do want to bring up that this is when I was reading about the Ruby Rose thing. I said, despite many studies showing that gender is not simply defined as male or female, many people continue to deny that gender fluidity is a real thing. But according to the advocate, this prejudice is quickly diminishing, with roughly 50% of young people now acknowledging that gender is a spectrum, not black and white. I mean, that's kind of how everything is. You just have to wait for the old people to die off and get rid of the old ways, and then everybody coming up kind of understands.
It is actually quite impressive, it seems, just the kids coming out of high school now, how aware and tolerant they are.
Yes.
Compared to when we graduated.
Absolutely.
I want to actually make another plug on that. Kansas City, I want to say, there was a homecoming queen that was elected who was identified as trans, and she didn't come out until, I think, sophomore year. So it was later people knew her as a boy. I think she even kept her boy name too, but she ran as queen and she won, and the Westboro Baptist Church came to yell at them and tell them that they're wrong, because that's their place.
Well, I need to throw a plug in there of my own then, because speaking of the Westboro Baptist Church, everybody knows Fred Phelps, the now deceased patriarch of Westboro Baptist Church, and his infamous battle against, let's call it just reality and science and understanding the people across the sexual spectrum and gender spectrum. And I think the demonization has caused a lot of harm. But Fred Phelps' son, he's got a couple of them, so I'm just going to keep his first name out right now. But I happen to be quite close to Fred Phelps' son.
Oh, really?
Yep. I've gotten a chance to hang out with him on a number of occasions. A very nice guy, now a public speaker. He speaks out against intolerance. And he would very quickly recant a story of when his father was a young man who experienced desires that are not exactly accepted in the church, and how he believes that these hidden desires are the reason for so much of his bigotry. And I think, people had an inkling on this, but...
Yeah. Well, there was even a study that, most of the politicians that rally, so the harder they rally against gay rights or anything, the more likely they are to be gay.
I want to pause you right there.
Yeah.
Just because I do want to finish this, but the school themselves, the student body got together and chased them out of the town chanting, long live the Queen.
Ah, nice.
So it was awesome to see that. And I was just thinking about, when I was a 5th grader or 6th grader, what would have meant if I would have seen that, and that would have been a very powerful thing to watch.
Oh, wow.
Do you guys actually want to know something? Because I grew up in a small town, and a lot of racism and homophobia, and I had blonde hair and everybody thought I was gay because nobody dyed their hair. Pretty backwards. And I try to figure out, why was I okay with homosexuality and everything because I'm a straight white male, and when I got to college, I was already okay with it, even though I had never met, and that I know of, anybody that was gay. You know why? Are You Being Served?
What?
The show Are You Being Served? That taught me to accept gay and lesbian people.
Interesting. So you learned from media.
Yes, absolutely. It was a old Canadian television show that seems like it's for old people. I loved it.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
Wow. I actually can't really trace the origins of my tolerance, but that's a good thing, I suppose. Just having it all blurred together. So I'm taking a look at the Tristatetrans.org website.
Sure.
And I'm looking down, and right on the front page, there are some amazing questions. And these are things that I, as a cisgender white male, would not think about as important issues on people's minds all the time. So this is very... this is also part of the learning process for me. The questions on the main page are things like, what are safe places for having fun? What's my best plan for insurance? Who are friendly doctors?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I guess that one came across my mind, but yeah, the second you said it, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that one's got to be huge.
Wow.
I love talking about transgender healthcare because it riles up everybody. One of the things that people get so pissed off about is...
And let's say if you do get pissed off about it, go ahead and give us a call at 701-478-4959.
I'm going to poke the bear a little bit here. That's one of the alphabet soups too.
Bear?
Yeah.
I think I know
Bear,
that.
they have their own initialization now.
But anyway, one of the things that we talk about transgender healthcare, everyone thinks immediately, why do these trans people want hormones? Why do they want hormones? First off, they have counselors and they have doctors telling them to go on hormones. And secondly, that's such a minuscule cost. And third, that's not it. That's not the only problem. There are bigger problems in the world. One of the bigger problems is when a transgender individual will go to a doctor and be like, my arm hurts. Sometimes the doctor goes, well, if you weren't transgender, your arm wouldn't hurt.
What?
But I hurt it in a car accident. Oh, okay, never mind. We'll address the car accident hurt arm. And the other thing like that, there is actually non-trans issue, but it made the front page. There was a man who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and he can't get insurance because he's not a female. Well, trans individuals, depending which way they go, if you're male to female, you have a likelihood of getting breast cancer, and you also have a likelihood of getting prostate cancer. So the fact that those aren't being screened make transgender people have to pick, oh gosh, which gender do I think I can survive better as?
Wow, that's I couldn't imagine being forced into a decision that wasn't comfortable like that.
Well, and then so then basically transitioning, you say from male to female, you actually get a double whammy. You actually get there is a more likely chance of both breast cancer and
there's not a more likely chance. There is a chance.
A chance. Okay.
So
true.
And then most people who have gone on hormone replacement therapy typically mirror what would happen to cisgender females. All right. Now, Jay's looking at me. I know you can't see this, but he looked at me like, cisgender?
Yeah, yep. That's it, yep.
Now, cisgender is the definition of that is the gender that you identify with, the biological gender you were born with. So that's cisgender.
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 Not cisgender.
Or cisgender.
Cisgender or...
cisgender. Go with it.
Okay.
I get the terms wrong, too. I feel so bad for people who feel like they're going to die or head explode because they got the wrong term. I do it, too. Everyone does it.
Okay.
I'm guilty of it. I'm not going to get super riled up if you screw up my pronoun or my name with me. I understand. We all make mistakes.
I appreciate that. I do feel a lot better now. But
yeah, here's the difference. I'm kind of taking over the mic, and I apologize.
No problem.
Here's the difference. It's your intention behind it.
Okay.
If you come up to me knowing that I'm trans and you go, well, hello, mister, just to rattle my feathers, that does make me mad. Like, it's intentional. I always describe it like this. I have two aunts. Both of them love the Bible. One aunt is like, the Bible is the best book ever. And the other aunt is like, you need to read the Bible or you go to the dark place. You're all sinners. So that would be Aunt B and Aunt A. Aunt A, if she gave you a Bible for Christmas, you would appreciate it because it's a gesture from the heart. And if you got a Bible from Aunt B, you'd be like, okay, apparently you don't like me as a person.
Okay.
Intentions.
And that to me with the whole pronoun thing, like if your intentions are fine or they're not malicious, yeah, great, wonderful.
Well, and I think that was another thing is I didn't know. I suppose you just want to be called the pronoun of whatever you are presenting at the time.
That is, if you had to assume, that's probably the safest assumption.
Right.
And yeah, if someone corrects you, they're not doubting you as a person or saying you're totally ignorant. They're just like, I prefer this one.
So let's say we had another person in the studio who has not really any judgment either way, but society is now telling them that they have to be aware of so many pronouns that they weren't raised with. And there are many that have been invented for this purpose. Is that correct?
No.
I was going to say, I've never heard of this before.
If you look through like old text and things of that nature, there are different pronouns for male, female, and everything in between. This is not new. It's something that did exist in the ancient culture. And I think there's some Judaism texts. I can't remember all what they are off the top of my head. But, you guys were talking about being raised in rural and all that stuff. I was raised up in a very conservative kind of way and atmosphere, and I didn't even know what a Democrat was until I was 20.
You thought they were jackalopes.
Now really, in saying that you're just speaking of being raised, I want to ask you a question. What is one of your first memories?
First memories or first memories of being trans?
One of your first memories. This is just because I've read a research and I want to know what your answer is.
Well, my answer is getting punched in the side of the head by my older brother.
Okay.
Not a fantastic first memory, but it sticks with you.
But then do you remember like the first time that you ever played dress up?
I don't think I ever played dress up.
Well, true. I guess but the first time you do it, you are playing, wouldn't you? As a kid, wouldn't you be like, I'm going to try this on, and it's not until you try it on.
It was more along the lines of that I grabbed something that I wanted to wear, and then I found out quickly from my parents, you're not supposed to wear that. And then I had to discover out why. But that took a long time.
Okay.
I do very clearly recall growing up and being told that I can't play this game or I can't wear that.
Oh yeah,
because I'm a boy.
I remember my buddy and I we had saw my sister and her friends playing the dating game, that old one where you like open up the doors, and they're having such a good time with it. And like even at that age, I like snuck it away out of their room, and we like hid in my room to play this board game because it was supposed to be for girls, you know.
I remember the game Girl Talk. I wanted to play it because I wanted to be a part of things. I didn't care what gender was for. I just wanted to play a game, you know.
Yeah. But I guess the reason why I did ask that is because I have read that a lot of people that are trans remember the very first time that they ever dressed up in.
I remember the first time that I presented female in public very, very vividly because it was the first time I felt comfortable in my own skin.
Oh.
It was the first time I didn't have anxiety stepping out into the world. So that was a very strong feeling. But I don't know. As far as playing the first time of dress up and things of that nature, it was just a natural process that got kind of curbed as I grew up because it wasn't right. But I have a question for you two. You guys are both playing girl games. When you did that, how quickly did you decide to become trans?
How quickly? It was right then, in that moment.
Really? Because you look pretty... You haven't told me you're trans. See, my point being is that just because you play a girl game, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a girl, or just because you play a boy game doesn't necessarily mean that you are a boy. One of the things I like with the transgender movement is that things that shouldn't be gendered are becoming a little less gendered, like Legos.
Right.
Well, there's this wonderful meme going around on the internet this last year that Legos inserted something in the 1970s with their toys, essentially saying sometimes girls want to play with fire trucks and sometimes boys want to build doll houses. Don't judge, just encourage creativity. And I thought that, I hope that's a real insert that they put in there because that would have made them pioneers in the toy industry.
It would have. And I think it's kind of silly that we don't let boys play dolls because what a great way to learn how to be a father to, your daughter or things of that nature.
Wow.
And, okay, we have a couple things to do, but I do want to, just to give you a moment to think about it, is because I identify as androgynous. I know that I have a mini androgynous. I have a lot of traits that could be considered feminine and a lot of traits that could be considered masculine, and I kind of want you to touch on that point here in a second. But right now we need to tell you that this hour of programming on KRFF 95.9 FM is being underwritten by Axis Clinicals. Axis Clinicals conducts clinical research studies in healthy volunteers and is located at 1711 Center Avenue West in Dilworth, Minnesota. For upcoming studies and job openings at Axis Clinicals, find them at axispays.com or call 218-284-AXIS. That is AXIS.
I'd also like to make an announcement of an event coming up here, and I think this is really pertaining to the subject we're talking about today. And although it's not directly dealing with gender, it is dealing with attitudes towards gender, and I think it's really important to go and join this event. The Rape and Abuse Crisis Center is hosting free screenings of the documentary The Mask You Live In at the Fargo Theater on Saturday 7th at 7 p.m. And The Mask You Live In is a documentary about how boys are raised and the mask that they are told they have to wear in order to conceal emotion and everything that's not stereotypically masculine. And I think it's hopefully going to get a lot of people to question how we raise boys in our society and the harms that come of it.
Excellent. And as long as we're just doing so many promo things and stuff that you should be doing, every week we have an open mic great podcast that also goes out. So why don't you give a little listen? We had a Italian couch surfer stop and chat with us this week, and why don't we give you a little preview of that right now? Oh, hold on. You know what? How about we give it to you? Oh, hold on. I told you I hate using the computer. I like when it's on CD. All right.
Did you know the person?
Here we go.
Have you griped with a zany Italian traveler? We have. Check out this week's Open Mic Gripe podcast.
I say let's go in the bathroom.
That's
be part of that.
Did you know the person?
No, I just met the guy. He was on the plane.
That's even better.
Yeah. And he goes like, are you in the club? And I say, no, I'm not. And he goes like, well, let's go in the washroom. And I was like, yeah, let me ask to the hostess some condoms. I'm uncoming. You know the meaning.
That was a really fun episode to record.
Yeah, it was.
So go and listen to it.
It was a female that has basically my same sense of humor, so that was really good.
And even less of a filter.
Yes, even less than I have, which is interesting.
All right. And yeah, so on the podcast, we get a chance to joke around a little bit. But today, I'm just happy to learn. Mm-hmm. So, back to the issue.
It's okay to tell jokes.
Well, how do I know that if I want to joke about this issue, no matter my intention, how do I know I'm just not being incredibly insensitive?
Oh, I guess anytime you tell a joke, so transgender people can be part of jokes. Like any person can be a part of a joke. It's not derogatory to be a part of a joke. It's derogatory to be the butt of the joke or the punchline of the joke. Yeah. That's what sucks. You know, it's as you think of me as a punchline or something of that nature.
So you could say like a priest, transgender person, and a rabbi walk into a bar.
Yeah.
And that's not the punchline.
Well, as long as the punchline isn't something about the transgender being the only unmoral one or something like that, or I don't
know one of the issues that often comes up with trans individuals is the right to use the bathroom and lockers and things of that nature. One of the things that I've saw going around, a meme going around, is who's gotten in more trouble in the public restrooms, transgender individuals or Republicans. But
okay.
I shouldn't poke fun because there are famous transgender Republican people. Name probably right now the most famous transgender person, Caitlyn Jenner. She identifies as a Republican. So I'm not saying just because you're Republican, that's, so I apologize for making Republicans the butt of that joke. That was low.
Well, how do Republicans feel about that? That's what's important.
I might be bipolitical.
I'm going to wait for the day where you guys have someone of the Republican persuasion on here.
Oh, we have. On the podcast we have. But I think more importantly is that we want to be as welcoming as possible to people from all different backgrounds and ideologies and political persuasions. And
we already know how we feel. We want to talk to somebody who doesn't feel this way.
Yep. But on that note, the simple rule is respect the people involved in the conversation, question the ideas. And that's how you have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And again, if you have any questions for us or for Rebel, go ahead and give us a call. We're at 95.9 KRFFLP, Moorhead Fargo. And the phone number to call us is 701-478-4959. What are you looking for this?
Yes. I have a post that I found today.
Well, he can answer my question.
What was the
about
question?
So, I think another thing when I heard the term bigender, I was just like, how is that different than being androgynous?
I guess that would be more of a question for you to answer yourself.
Okay.
If you feel like you're more bigender, then you can go with that label. If you feel like you want to go with androgynous, then go with that label. If you don't want to go with a label, then go with that. Okay,
so then I guess I was reading this. Somebody said, I think we need to clear up the terms, because I was researching this as well. I said, I think we need to clear up the terms first. Androgyny is a gender expression, and the bigender, genderqueer, etc. is the gender ID. So androgyny and bigender are not different types, but a whole different category.
One of the things that sometimes people think of drag queens as being transgender, but that is a gender expression. Mm-hmm. That is cisgender males, sometimes trans females, getting all dressed up and going out in drag. But at the end of the day, they don't feel like this is who they are. This is, they don't feel like they need to remain in this identity to be able to, work a normal job, to have a normal family, to just lead a normal life. For them, it's, entertainment, or it's just, an expression. Mm-hmm. It's I don't really know how to get more detailed than that.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
But speaking of grapes, because it's open line grapes.
Hey, let's stick with that. Okay. And this just might help the audience. It just says gender ID is something that, basically what you said, is something that can't be helped, is what your heart and brain tell you. Gender expression is how we choose to express our gender.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like a gothic kid wanting to wear, black gothic clothing, that would be expression. But, a transgender individual taking hormones and things of that nature, that would be gender identity.
Okay.
So, but we were talking, I threw out that, do you have another question?
Go on.
I threw out that joke out there because I do the Republican joke or whatever because of the one of the things that's happening right now. You talked about you saw Ruby Rux, but within transgender media, there is a discussion going on between Greer, a famous feminist, for not being allowed to speak at a university. And the person who has been advocating for her has been Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he recently was on Twitter about 2-3 days ago, and you can still see his posts are still front and center of him trying to explain what he understood, what Greer was trying to say, and things of that. So yeah, Dawkins basically he didn't come to the defense of transgender individuals. He was more or less, if you define gender as chromosomal, in other words, X and X equals female and XY equals male, then transgender women are not female. That was a statement that Dawkins made. And the problem with that is that we talked about earlier in the show, that's not always the case. You don't always have an XX and you don't always have an XY. Sometimes you have XXY.
So what would a biologist who's not trying to get publicity, I know my friends in the atheist community would probably butcher me for saying this, but I think we can all agree here that Dawkins is looking for a lot of media attention for some of the things he says. But how would a biologist see this? And does a biologist have any place to inform the public about this issue? You don't have to be a world-renowned feminist, or you don't have to be a world-renowned biologist to talk about biology or feminism or anything. It helps. But I think Dawkins is lacking a lot of personal experiences as well as getting to know the community. He's speaking from a purely almost sterile scientific kind of viewpoint. So he put an operational definition out there, and the problem with that was his operational definition wasn't even good to begin with. So, well, I mean, Dawkins puts his foot in his mouth even when he does have personal experience about the issue. But that's not the topic of today's conversation.
But I did feel a little bit, I don't know, if Greer wasn't allowed to speak, and I almost wonder if she should have been. Just because sometimes someone challenges your ideas, you either hold steadfast to your own or you change perspective. So
I have a path I want to take down, because we were talking about politics and how attitudes are formed by political parties, it seems. We see the Democrats going farther and farther towards the tolerance, towards understanding, towards compassion and empathy. Maybe not all of them, but as a whole, the party seems to be moving in one direction.
Weaker? Just getting weaker.
The Republican Party is also taking a stance on this issue. And with the Republican candidates trying to out-conservative each other, we're hearing some pretty offensive things. And I wanted to just throw a few of them out there.
Sure.
So, for example, let's see here. Recently, Ben Carson has been talking about how, I'm going to pull up this quote. Would you help me fill in the time here a second while I find this?
I really have no idea what to say.
Okay. Well, I got another one for you here then. Carly Fiorina.
Oh, yeah.
She said, if someone believes they are limited by gender, race, or background, they will become more limited. I think what she's trying to say is that their attitude approaching this, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but the attitude approaching this is harming them. What's your take on that?
I think having a good attitude is awesome, but doesn't mean that you're going to be able, to avoid that homophobic or that xenophobic or that racist boss. I mean, one of the things about transgender acceptance, this is fascinating. We were looking at this 2 years ago. 10% of people had said that they had met a transgender person. However, this is in America. 20% of people said that they had experienced ghosts. So at one time, ghosts had more of a legitimate identity than transgender individuals. So trying to go for apply for a job against a ghost, that would just be a very competitive field, and I don't know how I do against Patrick Swayze.
Well, I can say you're more tangible. But, okay, that's crazy, and I think that's a huge aspect of it, is how many people personally know someone who can identify with these titles so that they can at least have some empathy towards the people. I think that we really saw that with having the LGBT community coming out, and as soon as everyone knew someone in their life who was an amazing person, but gay, I think that really became
just happens to be gay.
Right.
I actually want to talk back to politics and apologize. When the SOCUS decision came out, I noticed that a lot more allies popped out of the woodwork because you couldn't get fired for being an ally either anymore.
Really? Okay.
Like back home where I was raised in the sticks with the, with all the Republicans and all the conservatives and things of that nature. So I noticed a lot more allies coming out. But going back to getting jobs and things of that nature and what people believe, it does seem like a little bit more on the conservative side of things. They still look at transgender people of having a mental disorder.
Yeah.
Like they label transgenderism as a mental disorder, and it's not.
Well, I saw that gender dysmorphia is labeled as a disorder in some cases, and
you're getting transgenderism mixed up with gender dysphoria.
Dysphoria, excuse me.
Which is the feeling, the anxiety of not being able to express.
Okay.
Or the anxiety of...
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. I found that quote, by the way, by Ben Carson. He said he was talking specifically about prison and apparently its effect to make people gay. He said,
okay,
because a lot of people who go into prison straight, and when they come out, they're gay. So did something happen while they're in there? Ask yourself that question. I'm sure he thought that was a zinger. But how, this Ben Carson is leading the Republican candidates right now. This is someone who more Republican voters think would do the best job to become president.
Yeah.
What do you think?
One of the things that always makes me a little bit nervous is with the politics and legality is when I go out into the street, if I get assaulted, will the law defend me? And there are, in the past, 48 states had a law that if your partner tricked you into, if your partner came out as transgender or something of that nature, you had the right to abuse them or hit them or something of that nature, but it's kind of dated. But recently a lawyer tried to argue that transgender people are less than cisgender people. That recently made the rounds. I'm not exactly sure where, but they try to argue that because of the mental disorder of being transgender, that they are less of a human than of the regular folk, quote unquote.
Wow. Okay. But that was just one lawyer. That wasn't exactly a movement, I hope.
It only takes one or two nut jobs out there to having somebody teach their kid or their child that mentality. Actually, that brings up another point. There was a 12-year-old that actually saw a transgender individual and was so scared of this transgender individual that they started shooting at her.
How old?
12. Just saw the transgender person walking on the sidewalk and just pulled out a gun. And this was in America. And because
of course it was in America. It was guns.
He had access to guns.
A 12-year-old with a gun. Yeah.
So, it happens. And, I don't know really what to say about that. But
okay. Well, just a reminder, please feel free to join the conversation. If you'd like to ask Rebel a question or talk to JRI, feel free to call us anytime at 701-478-4959. You're listening to Open Mic Grape on KRFF. So, I'll actually have
top of the hour to you.
Top of the hour. I wanted to ask, what are the origins of bigotry regarding gender and sexuality?
I don't know about the sexuality, and I really don't know much about the gender, but one of the things that I find fascinating is if you look through history, you see transgender or people who don't quite fit the male or female mold. And one of the things that people, I don't know, I feel like it was in the 1950s where there was, I feel like that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Because if you look in the way past, issues about bathrooms and things of that nature, you went on the street. It wasn't an issue. So, but now you look at the modern era, people are like, well, we should have family bathrooms. And when people talk about, bi-gender bathrooms, they kind of mean that. That's a part of what they mean. Now, bi-gender bathrooms would fit best for people who identify like me by gender, where female bathrooms would be the best for people who identify as female. But when you see that family bathroom, like how I kind of think of that as this is a place for families. This is a place for the people who may have a disability, who need a bigger space, and this is a place for bi-gender people who don't feel comfortable, peeing with the wrong sex. So
there's a wrong sex.
Now, so are you saying that you wish there was like a bi-gendered bathroom as opposed to just a family bathroom?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that when you think of that bathroom, think of it as also bi-gender.
Oh, okay.
Not only just a family bathroom. Like
gotcha. That makes more sense. That was the thing. I had one of my friends actually. He's like. When I told him that, we have the Open Mic Gripe podcast, he was just like, well, I've got a gripe for you. And his gripe was talking about how he wasn't on board with everybody making more bathrooms because he's like, well, then they're going to have a family bathroom and a male bathroom and a women's bathroom and then, and this kind of bathroom and that. And I said, that's not what people are trying to do, as far as I understood at that time. What they're trying to do is they're trying to have a male, a female, and then a family, which is for everybody.
Yes.
Most places I've worked have had single stall bathrooms anyway. I mean, I don't understand why they need to be.
Well, I've worked at plenty of places that they have male and they have female, and that's it.
Okay. I mean, they usually have the handicap accessibility, a handicap accessible bathroom as well, and that tends to be larger with a changing station. Oftentimes, tends to be more family friendly. What is the solution?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed being out and about in Fargo, because Fargo for me is a safe place because I go from a town of 288 to a town of 100,000 plus. So I feel Fargo is pretty safe, but it's not safe everywhere. And for the most part, I stick to the places that I know are safe. And what I've noticed is that businesses that are too small to have 3 bathrooms are typically, they only have 1-stall bathrooms anyway, which kind of fit the bi-gender mold, or you're not going to offend anyone because you're in there by yourself. And really, realistically, why is someone going to the bathroom offensive?
Well, realistically, who goes to the bathroom to be with other people?
Yeah, that's weird.
But I do think that is one of the big fear. Now I am speaking of like homophobia and everything, but I think that's a big fear of people. They're just like, not even it's like, hey, this person comes in, they might look at my penis or whatever it is, but it might be, they're afraid of somebody masquerading even. That just be, they think that it's too easy for, a pervert just to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm like this, so I'm going to go in the women's bathroom. I identify as a female, so I'm going to go in the women's bathroom and I'm going to oogle the women. And I think that's some people's fears.
I think if you oogle anyone in the bathroom, regardless of sex or gender, I think you probably should have a conversation with the police.
Very true.
Well, also, what this does is it just starts to paint people who are not cisgender or who don't fit neatly into that cultural mold that we all were raised with. Paints them as predators. Paints them as something that's not.
We've had we had a conversation with one of somebody who's big in the atheist circuit who is now I've got bi-gender on the brain, bisexual.
Yes.
And he was talking about how even in media they are represented basically as vampires.
Yep. Yeah.
And because as a predatory, animal basically.
Or a neat little chameleon that can fit into any situation, or even people like Dan Savage.
Go ahead, Rebel.
Oh no, I was going to say I also think one of the frustration for bisexual people is that they get identified as confused, especially when they switch. If they go to an opposite sex partner.
Yeah.
You know what? I just decided I wanted to pull up just a couple myths, and since you just mentioned this one of the myths is trans people are just, and I want you to reply to this. Trans people are just extra gay, so gay that they go over the edge into the other gender.
You're overflowing with gay.
Yeah, you're just so gay that it's just like, oh, now I've got to become another gender.
Wow.
That's what they believe.
If you could see me right now, you could just see the gay come like steaming off of me. I'm just so extra gay.
It's like rainbow steam.
Yeah, it's rainbow steam, and when my tongue is rainbow as well, and I have like 50 piercings all over my face. And, I actually, I don't think I ever identified as gay. Mm-hmm. I identified as trans, and I guess I don't know what to tell you about that. Just going back to the gender doesn't always equal, sexuality. Who I like is different than who I am,
Right.
Okay. Wow. Jay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about how many people actually, because again, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about gender and sexuality is a different thing. And I think one thing that confuses a lot of people is when you have somebody who is transgendered and they don't feel comfortable in their body, so they transition to the other gender, and I think it really confuses them when they like the other gender. Wait, hold on. Now I'm getting myself confused. So if I should put it out. So like maybe they're male, but they identify as female, and then they like men. Wait, I'm getting so confused that even at my own question.
I think for the most part, I think you're kind of answering your own question without even being aware of it. Transgender people go out into the world and find who they're attracted to and date that person. If that person's willing to date them, there has to be a mutual attraction, despite what some people might tell you.
But regardless of whether they regardless of what gender they are externally or whatever at that time, it doesn't matter who they're attracted to. It doesn't matter if it's like before transition or after transition, they're still attracted to the same people, and I think that confuses some people.
So what?
Well, I know, yeah. I mean,
so you don't get what's going on with my relationship. So what? So what? Sure. That's basically my point. I actually have a partner who I told after the fact about my transgender identity. And for the most part, most trans people lose their spouse or something of that nature. But this person was like, cool, awesome. Awesome. This is fine. I still like you. I don't care. And it confuses some people, but it's our relationship. So what does it matter to them? Right.
No, I appreciate that. It's amazing to me how often people feel that cultural matters need to be placed in people's personal lives.
Right. Well, and in fact, even our friend Ben that was even talking about that he is bisexual, but he said it's always been easier for him to date men because when he dates women, all of their girlfriends always think that he's just gay, and they can't understand the difference of a gay person and a bisexual person.
They think he's the beard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or she's the beard.
Isn't that the expression?
She would be the beard.
She would be the beard? Okay. There we go. I just learned that.
Yeah. That's not a derogatory term, is it?
Don't ask me.
Okay.
I don't know.
You're not like speaking. I don't know. You're more of an expert than I am.
So what I'm interested in right now, I'm looking at the website again, the tristatetrans.org. And why tri-state? And are there differences between the states in terms of attitude and accessibility?
You heard the Norwegian come out of me. Okay, so Minnesota ranks really well. Like, it's in the top 10 as far as attitudes towards trans people. A matter of fact, I knew that there was some laws that would protect me if someone, got aggressive or things of that nature. So when I first time going out female, I went to Minnesota because I knew that, I'd be safe there legally. But then I, crossed the river and came to North Dakota and Fargo, a pretty safe place. People kind of they might be upset by your existence, but they're not going to say anything to you. just, huff and fume and walk away. But for the most part,
North Dakota nice in action.
I'll pray for you.
Basically, yeah. I had someone come up to me one time and goes, "I hope you have a better day today. Like, I decided to be trans because I had a bad day." But which is way different than South Dakota. And like, you also see that attitudes like on like when you look at like OkCupid or this different dating websites that have those transgender options, you kind of see like there's like 4 people in South Dakota, and then there's like 15 in North Dakota, and then there's like 35 in Minnesota. So as the attitudes get more acceptance, you see more trans people coming out. And there's actually somewhere, I Googled it, like what is the safest state, and I got states ranked, and North Dakota is like number 20, Minnesota is top 10, and then South Dakota ranks 47th. And that's why we're tri-state, because we serve Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota.
Okay. But generally speaking, if someone was looking at moving to the Fargo-Moorhead area, where would you advise them to live? On what side of the river?
On what side of the river? Oh, that's a tough question. I've never had an issue with anyone. I know that there are plenty of places in Fargo. I don't know about Minnesota laws. I know that that was what SB Bill 2279 was all about, is whether or not you could get kicked out of your apartment if someone discovered you're trans. We don't have any protections in place for North Dakota residents. But actually, one of the members of Tri-States is a landlord of an apartment complex, and she lives in Fargo. Who I communicate with via Facebook. So there are safe places.
Okay, so you would have suggestions, or at least a list of options for people who are looking for safe places?
Yeah, if someone wanted to shoot us an email, that'd be perfect. That'd be a great idea. So
okay. What other services does the group offer if someone's coming here and, let's say, doesn't really know anything about the area?
Well, there's a mentorship program that one of the local girls here does, and she's there quite often, and people can come in there and talk, ask her questions and experiences and things of that nature. We do a group meeting once a month to reach out and find people who are looking for support and things of that nature. Recently, we helped an individual move back to Bemidji. They had moved out of the area, had some trouble. So there's a Bemidji transgender group that works closely with Tri-State, and their group is called BATS, the Bemidji Area Transgender Society. So BATS. They contacted us, and we got this woman back to a place where she could work and live safely. So there's quite a barrage of things that we can do.
And do you have any gripes pertaining to some of the difficulties you face with raising awareness about this?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the biggest gripes that I sometimes run into is sometimes the T is silent in the LGBTs. Sometimes people don't incorporate us into that, and they talk about how, well, now that the gay marriage is a thing, equal rights battle is over. You trans people are on your own.
Wow, this is a great year. First racism was over, and now the
racism was. There was a song. Coolio and Brad Paisley did a song about how racism was over.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I do find it interesting because now, since we're talking about this so much, you said there's a couple of girls in the office or in the group, and I was just like, okay, does he mean girls? Does it mean people that identify as girls? But they're all girls. It shouldn't matter. It's all the same thing. Okay.
Wow. It certainly is. So there are many times where I find myself having to recalibrate and adjust the way I speak, the way that, you look back and you think, holy crap, how insensitive must I have come across with the way I spoke before? Right. I mean, I wouldn't have understood that words like tranny are incredibly offensive. That's just it's a learning process for everyone.
I would agree that it's a learning process, but now that you know that that's an offensive word, like Maybe not use
not
it.
even on the radio. Okay. Well,
But
I
you were
agree with
using
that.
it in
Thank you.
your context of which
Yeah.
that was in was educational. So
Okay.
I appreciate. I'm not mad.
No, okay. Thank you.
I'm not trying to kill Jeff right now. I promise.
No, it's. I agree.
But that's even with the H word that I wanted to say. I knew that would, but I wanted to make sure too that the audience knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But even on that one, I was just like, okay, I know. I didn't even want to say it because I knew that it is now considered a derogatory term. So.
And I agree with Jay as well that media has shaped the way we see these things a lot. Now that we're doing letter-words, I'm on that. There was an episode of Louis, Louis C.K., the stand-up comic, and the beginning of his episode talks about the F word.
Wait, letter-words, what? Now that we're doing letter-words?
He's talking about the Oxford definition of a bundle of sticks.
Oh.
Yes, that is correct. And it kind of talks about how they asked this comic, essentially, does it bother you when people say the word? He said, does it bother you when you say the word? No, but the fact is that people were raised, the character was explaining that people were raised growing up getting beat while hearing that word. And so the word brings up a lot of trauma, brings up a lot of difficulties. And I found it a very interesting way to describe why.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the word that you brought up, it's a very dehumanizing word because, one, it refers to a car part, and two, it is how trans people were sold, objectified, like sexually. They were put into a place of disposition, where they had to make money. And how do you advertise? You use the word that you said before. So, and that's why that word is offensive because, one, it's a car part, and two, it's, it means sexual objectification,
Okay. Well, thank you again for correcting me.
Yeah, but I could be wrong.
So if I can share something with you, this was sent from a friend in California, someone who is recently, is it correct to say recently transitioned, or what is the appropriate way to describe this?
I don't know your friend well enough to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. So my friend basically wrote, the whole transition is doing wonders for not only for my body, but for my mind and creativity. The more I transition, the more I feel my body and connect to myself. And therefore, I'm 1,000 times more creative in the way that I've always wanted to be. And he goes on discussing how much he has felt constrained in the past, and by just being able to transition and been allowed to unleash the creativity in a musical way. And that's, I don't know, I found it to be very motivational.
Yeah, I think when somebody transitions, they take away a lot of barriers. There's a lot of mental and physical barriers that we are unaware of because we don't feel what they feel. We don't know what they know. Most trans people, when they transition, they talk about just how much easier like day to day is, instead of having to think about, do people know? Are people thinking about this? Oh my gosh. And, they just go out into the world and do their thing.
Well, I think it's got to be hard for so many people even to start to understand what the trans community goes through. Because, I mean, I can't say I've ever felt uncomfortable in my own body.
Yeah.
So the concept of not identifying as my cisgender, it's just so hard to grasp.
I kind of have a response that I use, but I don't know, it might be a bit, snarky or whatever. If you understood what it was like to be transgender, you'd probably be transgender. Like if you had those feelings and you had those understandings, if you knew what it was like not to be able to present the gender that you wanted to present, I think that is one of the things that is really hard for today's society, because society is always trying to be in a place of understanding, to try to become an expert of somebody else. Like, having your women's studies class be a male teacher or things of that nature. Granted, a male teacher could teach women's studies, but that male would never understand what it was like to be female,
right.
Unless he understood and had those feelings and had those emotions and had those things. So I think with the trans people, there's just an element that people can't wrap their heads around because it's not tangible.
Right.
It's kind of a unconscious or conscious feeling that people have in their own mind, and no matter how hard you try, you can never jump into my shoes and experience my experiences. It's just you can't.
Wow. Yeah. I have a couple of questions. I mean, that was I just don't know how to transition out of that. But
well done, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions for you. For people who are underage and living with their parents, what kind of, I know there's no one solution fits all. But what kind of advice can you come up with? If they feel like they might not be safe.
So I'm talking to the young people?
Yeah. Underage people. Oh, that is.
You know what? Go ahead and take a second to think about it, because go ahead and get your thoughts prepared if we're going to be speaking out to the young people. But right now, we want to tell you that this hour of underwriting is from programming on KRFF 95.9 LPFM is being underwritten by Romo's Mexican Deli and Catering. Romo's Mexican Deli and Catering features authentic Mexican cuisine classics like burritos, tacos, soups, salads, and much more. Romo's has 3 Fargo locations, 1100 19th Avenue North and 3402 13th Avenue South, and downtown at 118 Broadway in the basement. For their deli specials, search Romo's Mexican Deli and Catering on Facebook.
Thank you for that, Jay.
You're welcome.
And once again, feel free to join the conversation at any time. Feel free to give us a call at 701-478-4959.
Excellent. So the young people.
So I'm reaching out to the youth. Actually, I don't want to reach out to the youth just yet. I want to talk to the parents of the youth.
Oh, excellent.
If your child is expressing, a gender identity that is different of their own, there was a fantastic study that was done up in Ontario where they looked at transgender individuals and if they had supportive parents versus non-supportive parents. And if they had supportive parents, the rates of suicide, the rate of depression, the rate of homelessness was the exact same of the general society. The suicide rate was 4%. The depression rate was like 33%, which is, or maybe even a little bit lower, because that's when you look into general society, that's what you see. Homelessness rate was at 0. With kids who had unsupportive parents, the suicide rate was 40%.
Oh, wow. Did you say from 4 to 40%?
4 to 40%.
Wow.
Depression was at 78% and homelessness rate was at 33%. So my advice to those parents out there is don't be your child's first bully.
That is an excellent... That's an excellent way to put it.
I know there's parts that you may disagree with, or, that's your own journey. That's your family's journey. Good luck. There's people out there that will love you and support you unconditionally. Feel free to give them a call. This is a good segue to the young people.
Okay. All right.
If you're feeling unsafe or anything of that nature, you can come to a group meeting. You can reach out to us online. Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook have been fantastic places for young people to, if they can't express their gender identity in a physical form, they can do it in a digital form. So that's a great place, and they can get information, resources, and things of that nature.
Okay. Are these issues being taught about in school?
Oh, boy. The public school is a very interesting place. I happen to work in the public school. You see some Facebook posts, and you shouldn't get too wild up about them because they probably are the minority, but of where they don't want their kids to be taught that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be bisexual, and it is. It's a part of nature. You see it in different mammals. You see it in different species. You see it in different cultures. So it's totally normal. Some schools are really taking the bull by the horns and talking about anti-bullying, and they have a GLBT awareness day. And some schools are lacking, but that's just the nature of public schools. So.
Okay. Do you think the school boards help or hinder?
Being a member of a school and working for one, I'm afraid that I can't comment on that right now.
All right, that's fair. Well, I can comment.
Okay.
School boards are an interesting idea. You get members of the public voted in to help guide where education's going. But a lot of times, squeaky wheels are the ones who get the attention. Yeah. Squeaky wheels often get to sit in those chairs. I am not sure why school boards are a reality here in the United States, having lived in countries where school boards just aren't a thing, and you'll have entire teams of education professionals who make decisions about the direction education needs to go. And I just can't believe that so much of what we perceive as a culture war gets injected into school boards, be it denial of various scientific claims, be it denial of tolerance towards gender and sexuality. And I see this as the worst possible place for a culture war in a school board.
School shouldn't be political. It should just be educational.
Yeah.
That's a good tidbit. I like that. Maybe I can tell my school board that.
Okay. Wow. Well, if you're on a school board, feel free to call us at 701-478-4959.
I think we on that issue, having a teacher shortage in North Dakota, I think also plays into effect of the LGBT acceptance and things of that nature, because I feel like we need good teachers. We need to have good conversations, and we need to have people that foster these good conversations. And right now, North Dakota is lacking in having those people foster those conversations. However, we're not even the worst state. The worst state is directly south of us. They have one of the biggest teacher shortages in the United States. Okay. And this has an effect on North Dakota because we lose residents to there because they give them scholarships. They give our kids and our teachers scholarships to go down south and vice versa. And there we go.
Oh, look at that. All right. Give me 1 second here. Hello, you're on Open Mic Gripe Live.
Hi. I guess I just had a question for your guest.
Yes, Rebel. She's got a question for who are we speaking with?
My name's Angelica.
Angelica.
Okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I was curious if Rebel had any insight into how healthcare is for trans people, because a lot of times people when they transition will involve things like hormones, surgery, also therapy, just to get through the transitioning process. And I guess I'm curious to know what they know about how healthcare professionals treat people who are transitioning.
That's a great question. We did touch on this subject, and I think you asked a couple of questions that go further in depth, which I really appreciate. Thank you very much for that. I think for the most part, it's a gamble when you go to the doctor and you don't know how your doctor is going to treat you, because one, if you have like I said this earlier, if you transitioned and you're on hormones, the doctor, and you hurt your arm in a car accident, the doctor might not initially be like, oh, it was a car accident that hurt your arm. They might be like, oh, the hormones are causing muscle pain and you should probably, redirect, get off of hormones for a little while, or, and not even just completely oblivious of the fact you were just in a car accident. And then the other thing too is with healthcare, therapy is a part of the transition process. Like, they want you to get therapy. So we have gatekeepers on who we are. That's almost not fair. Like, you can't be who you are unless you talk to X. They know more about you than you do.
But is that really what it is? It's you have to talk to them first, or is it more just that there's a lot of mental health that is going to happen with society and the pressure that comes from moving between genders?
Sure, but let's also talk about before I get into that. I also
let's thank our call. Let's get a chance to thank our caller. Thank you so much for calling in.
Oh yeah. Yes, I do appreciate the call. Okay, so hormones is one of the issues that often come up with transgender transitioning with hormones. Okay, if I wanted to, I can get hormones tonight. If I wanted to.
We might have to talk. If you can get hormones that easy.
Well, in some countries, they're not a Class A drug. They're not gate kept. That's what you got. It's unfair that we keep hormones from young females. It's unfair that we keep hormones from trans people. It's just unfair. So if I wanted to transition, to go back to your question, I'd have to get at one time, it depends on state, 2 letters of recommendation for transition to give to a endocrinologist to give me hormones. So all this costs money, this costs time, this costs energy, this costs effort.
Where do these barriers come from? Sorry to interrupt.
I don't even know.
Outdated laws, I'm guessing.
If someone went through the correct legal process of becoming trans, they'd have to drive to Minneapolis every so often, and just that alone is enough to hinder some people because they don't have the means because they were fired for being trans.
Wow. Is this something that people are discourage? I mean, is it put in place to discourage people?
No, not at all. You go to a counselor and you say, "Hey, I have these transgender feelings." They're like, "Okay, do you want to go on hormones?" "Yes." "Okay, let's get you on hormones."
Okay.
I don't think it's that simple. It's a long journey, but being trans is not discouraged. There's nothing wrong with being trans. It's not a mental disorder. So being transgender is not a mental disorder. So
right. No, I mean, I just. Since coming back to the States, I've been reading so much about the, gay conversion therapies and some of the things that are just incredibly harmful for people.
You mean praying the gay away?
Yeah.
I want to actually pause. We can get on that subject next, but I have a question for any of you. How many of you have heard of a female or transgender person ODing on hormones?
Never.
Yeah, never. That's kind of...
Okay. So no harm. And
wait, can you OD on them and people just don't?
Can you OD on Tylenol?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
If that's the intent.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're not saying well, come on, but there's idiots everywhere. There's got to be one person that's like, come on, if I interject this in my leg, all of them at one time, I'll be transitioning way faster.
Just as there's idiots out there to say if I take a whole bottle of Tylenol, my fever will go away.
But still, there's never been anybody that's OD'd on hormones.
Not that I know of.
Oh wow, interesting.
May I read something from the website? It says here, and this is something I was kind of hoping you could elaborate on why specific hospitals are suggested and why a specific hospital is not. I don't know if we should or are allowed to say the name here, but it says here, unfortunately, the only answer we have to the question, who are friendly doctors, is don't go to, and then it lists a very specific hospital that's the largest healthcare provider in the area. Unless you have to. So don't go there unless you have to. Why? What is the reasoning?
Probably because one of the members had a bad experience there.
Okay.
One of the members may have been, I don't know, may not have received health care. I don't know. I don't know the story off the top of my head. Like I said, I'm more of the rural. So this was a Fargo incident that happened. But my guess is it was a bad experience. Couldn't find a trans-friendly doctor.
Okay. All right. So it's not like institutionally it usually goes from doctor to doctor, or is it?
Oh, gosh. Here's the biggest problem. Okay, so let's take the Girl Scouts, for example. Recently, this goes back to the doctor thing. I'm not getting totally off tangent. There is a company that is stationed here in Fargo. It's a rather large company that has transgender inclusive policies and things of that nature. But just because you have that policy doesn't mean that the person who works for you will execute that policy.
Right.
You know, there are doctors in the United States that flat out refuse to provide service to a transgender individual.
And they can do this. Why?
freedom of religion, I don't know. But
it's like the lady that is refusing to give out marriage certificates to gay people down south.
Yeah, but that was deemed illegal.
Right. Well, that's just it. But nothing seems to be happening of it. So in the same case where I'm sure doctors have more of a right to refuse.
Here's the problem, though, with the doctor thing. Okay, so you refuse to help this trans person, and now they're dead.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they do have the Hippocratic Oath, what it should be, do no harm, and that's obviously causing harm.
That's a universal oath.
Yeah. Hippocratic even.
I haven't seen too many cases of that. I know most of the doctors out there would jump in a heartbeat and things of that nature. But you do hear of things coming through the grapevine.
Let's take a quick break to play a little promo, and then we'll get back. And I've got a question for you, of course, Rebel. So sure. Let's just check this out. Of course, we want you, if you want to join the conversation, make sure we are on 95.9 KRFF LP, Moorhead, Fargo. And if you want to join the conversation, call us at 701-478-4959. And right now, enjoy a little preview of the Open Mic Gripe podcast. Not a specific episode, all episodes. What is happening? Wait, what just happened? Nope, that's not the right one.
There we go.
Enjoy a preview of the Open Mic Gripe podcast. Listen up, and the next gripe might be yours.
Not to sex shame.
We're totally. He's gonna kill his grandmother. I'm slut shaming my mother. Like this is great.
You guys, I'm in my 30s and I'm a bachelor. What else am I supposed to be spending my money on instead of just like ridiculous crap?
That's a really good point.
What an American you are.
Well, it takes about like 10 years for people to really find their voice,
right,
and to find what their thing that they can bring to everybody.
Well, I mean, just in terms of and I would suck at comedy, but
we all know
that's definitely
a bunch of like kind of different fruits all mixed together.
Okay,
like Liberace's bathroom.
Yeah, pretty much. You guys are...
How would you define the success of this podcast?
To be determined.
That's what a cop-out.
Oh, no. In my opinion, the success is, do we speak to people? Do people get anything from gripes? Gripe with us on the Open Mic Gripe. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and iTunes. Alternatively, you can email us at openmicgripe@gmail.com or openmicgripe.libsyn.com.
Hello, caller. Are you still there?
Yeah, still there.
Oh, thank you so much for holding.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't care either way. I do consider it a mental illness, but that's neither here nor there. How do you guys feel about, people giving this stuff to kids? Like, kids who are confused at, 7 and 8 years old. They say they feel trans. Turns out they're just gay, but their parents put them on these hormones.
All right. Good question for our...
Oh, that's why.
That's why everything sounded weird.
It's a good question for our guest. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, one of the things is that they don't put hormones. They don't put 7 and 8 year olds on hormones. They might put them on puberty blockers. I also don't think it's up to the parents whether or not that individual. In other words, the parents can't put their child on hormone replacement therapy. The child has to agree to it. And the other thing about it being a mental disorder or confusion or things of that nature, when you look at the statistics, people who self-identify young or early typically identify as trans later in life. It's pretty common that even in later life they still identify as trans. But of course, there's always those outliers that change their mind or go back, and that's okay.
Well, and I would have to say, if there has been a case, because some parents can be awful, if there has been a case of parents just forcing hormones onto their child, I would not agree with that.
Well,
I mean,
child abuse.
Yeah, if you force alcohol into your child,
exactly.
or if you, So,
but I would say, but obviously, if a child wants to take the hormones, or like you said, puberty blocker, they actually, I mean, obviously, they need their parents' permission, though. Correct?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and then they need permission from the child. That's part of informed consent. You have permission from the parent, and then you have permission from the child.
At what age is a child able to give that kind of consent, though?
It's when I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a legal expert, but I feel like it's. I think I can't recall the term. You have informed consent, and then you have another thing that the child signs, making sure that he knows that informed consent and things of that nature have been explained to them. Typically, if there's no mental impairments or anything of that nature, the child will sign that second piece of paper. But for the most part, the parents have the say on whether or not their child can go to a therapist for depression or anxiety or trans issues or you name it.
So they have to be old enough to write their name.
Probably, yeah.
Probably? All right.
Another thing I just wanted to cover, and I really do appreciate...
And thanks to that caller for calling in.
No, I do actually appreciate the caller calling in, because this is an opinion which I have heard many times, and I'm really glad that they were able to share their voice. It's about the idea of it being a disorder, or about it being a disease, a mental illness or something. Every single authority out there. In this case, I'm looking at a page right now from the American Psychiatric Association, which is the go-to.
The go-to, yeah.
And it's absolutely clear that, a psychological state is considered a mental disorder only if it causes significant distress or disability. Many transgender people do not experience their gender as distressing or disabling, which implies that identifying as transgender does not constitute a mental disorder. And when it comes to this, the only thing that I've ever seen, I know it takes time for people to change their opinions, but if every single authority out there is saying that this is exactly what we would expect to find in nature, is exactly, the sexual spectrum tends to be witnessed and viewed in almost every single mammalian species. Humans are no exception. And this is exactly...
Yeah, but come on. God made us different.
Oh, see, that's the thing. And I think anytime we try to suggest that gender or sexual orientation is abnormal for our species, it's coming from such a strong desire to see our species as different or special in some way.
Right.
And
not just another, a more evolved animal.
Right, exactly. And so it can be really harmful.
I think you two have some really great points, but I want to go back to the APA. Many counselors and, many people who work with trans individuals will go to the APA and look, okay, I have a trans client who just told me they're transgender. What does the APA recommend? And their APA, I can't quote it verbatim, but they recommend transitioning for someone who wants a transition. So,
they suggest it. Okay.
Yeah, for someone who wants a transition.
Okay.
So if you're going through a checklist and things of that nature, that's all you. The APA is cool with it.
Wow.
I don't.
So as a whole, you don't have to be a professional in the field of psychology or psychiatry to accept what the consensus says is, the best way we understand something. In this case, it's that it's not a mental disorder, it's not a disease. But I think you do have to be a professional with some credentials in order to question the consensus, in order to say, you can take a look at it and inform an opinion. But it can be really harmful going out there and telling people that this is what you think and this is why, because it spreads.
I want to go back to that Ontario study that I talked about earlier with the parents accepting it. If the parents accepted the transgender client, the rates of depression, suicide, homelessness, all that other stuff, right on with the general society. It's only when people kick their kid out for being trans that it becomes an issue for a transgender individual.
Okay. And we only have about 10, 15 minutes here. But if you feel like calling in and telling us, especially if you happen to disagree with us, if you want to, I'm curious, what could be the harm in tolerance? What could be the harm in wanting to accept people for how they want to describe themselves?
Well, it's funny you said two words that are very different: tolerance and acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. So feel free, once again, call us 701-478-4959.
Well, okay, and I have a question for you, Rebel.
Sure.
So we've got transgender. where does it end? I mean, come on now. We have transracial. We have some people that are trans species. Okay. What are we gonna go? Okay. Trans elemental, trans planetary. I don't know. I'm just saying, where does it end?
Okay, so a lot of people associate transracial with transgender.
Come on, they both say trans. How can they not be basically the exact same thing?
I do not know where to start with that. You blindsided me with that one. But basically, there are a lot of wonderful posts and a lot of wonderful information out there posted by people who, who are transgender and who are African American or who are Asian, who can talk about the differences being transgender versus, being black and things of that nature. And they can touch on that topic a lot better than I can. But if we're going to talk about transracial isn't even the correct term. That transracial has something to do with adoption, where you're adopting from a different race as your own. So I think it was kind of funny that Rachel Dolezal identified that way, but to each her own.
Well, if you type in transracial into Google, it says across or crossing racial boundaries. That's about all it says, which is pretty...
That sounds like fun.
Well, it's pretty generic. Okay.
Sorry, I had to throw something glib in there.
And the other thing I want to point out, too, is that someone who has a transgender identity might not always transition. They might not always go full hormones. Kind of like Ruby Rux. They may like that gender fluidity or Miley Cyrus or, you can even say people like RuPaul, like he's a drag queen, and that's where it starts and ends with them. But then there are other people who their journey is going to take a few more steps than, just expressing themselves. So.
Okay. I'm really happy with the way you've been able to answer so many of the questions tonight, and I think that I kind of wish these are the conversations that we could all have without feeling like we need to put our foot in our mouths every time we talk about it. And I think it's been really constructive.
Well, there are people out there. Doesn't matter if you're trans, Buddhist, Muslim, black, who've had really bad experiences and may not always know what your intentions are when you come and talk with them and things of that nature. I would definitely make sure they know that you're coming from a good place.
Okay.
So that's just my caveat. You'll catch a lot more flies with sugar than you will with vinegar.
Is it appropriate to announce oneself as an ally as a way of showing that best intentions are in mind?
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely doesn't hurt, and you can talk about experiences. But sometimes, why does that matter? Like sometimes, why do you have to tell me? Like I come out as trans. Oh, that's cool. I did this thing.
Yeah.
Well, just tell me about what makes you you, and I'll talk about what makes me me.
Well, so coming from a position of curiosity, I think empathy cannot exist without awareness.
Yeah.
And the more aware you are of concerns, thoughts, of the process itself, the more empathic you can be about it. And so I admit that I'm sure, people walking down the street don't want to be bothered by everyone who's curious.
Yes.
Especially they don't want that to be the defining feature of themselves rather than, say, their personality or their interests. But at the same time, if someone is able to answer a few questions, I just feel like it's so much easier to empathize.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, like, with anything, go to the resource first, But I feel like this was a good discussion. I feel like the transgender voice in Fargo is getting put out there a little bit more. There's a lot more trans people than I think we are aware of. There's quite a handful of people that come to the Fargo meetings, and they're from Fargo themselves. And
okay.
Can Jeffrey brought up being an ally. Can somebody be an ally and completely uncomfortable with the idea? I mean, let's say they just don't understand it. They're open. They don't understand it. They're maybe even uncomfortable with it, but they're not out to. They think you should have all the rights, but they're just not comfortable with it. Or would you not consider them an ally?
Yeah. So
I'm throwing you the hard balls here.
So basically what you're asking me is this person comfortable with you as a human being? And the answer is no. So how would you consider that person an ally?
What if they're not? So what if they're just not comfortable with the people, but they're comfortable with the community?
Okay.
Well, hey, you know what? It's kind of like the flip-flop of I can like religious people, but I don't like the religious community.
You mean, well, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
You know? And
Also,
so it's just a flip-flop where they want to be an ally to the community, but they're not necessarily comfortable with...
Jay, aren't communities for the people in them?
Yeah, they are.
And more importantly is when coming to any judgment, you should really get to know the individual.
Well, true, you should, but sometimes, you know, like I'm kind of talking about people out there that might be for this or think that they're for this, but not have a lot of understanding.
I understand where Jay is coming from, because I have had this experience where people are like, I respect that, but I'm just not comfortable with you doing that. Like, I've had a person say, well, I'm your ally. And then I asked them, like, hey, do you want to come to this event? And they're like, are you dressed as a female right now? I'm like, yes, this is a female event, and do you want to come to this? Not right now with you. So, like, they claim to be an ally, but then when push comes to shove, like, one of my persons goes, oh, that's so cool. And I go, do you want to see a picture? No, that would freak me out.
See, it's a good question.
So it was a very fair question. But I also want to go off what Jeff said is, worry about the individual. Like, not everyone in the community reflects every individual. Right. And that's one of the things that I wanted to say.
All right. Do you have any ideas, any pitches that you'd like to send out? Any one more reminder about the website and possibly any information you'd like to share?
Yeah, if you're looking for information, go to tristatetransgender.org. You can also look us up on Facebook. You can find us there. We typically work out of the Pride Collective. We have been at the Pride in the Park and events of that nature, but I also want to give, while I'm on here, a special thanks to Faye and Erica for all the hard work that they do within the Fargo community, as well as Kay. She was Kay and D, who were older members who kind of laid the groundwork for some of the younger members to come in and feel safe and comfortable. So,
wow.
Well, excellent. I mean, everybody deserves a place to feel comfortable. I mean, that's...
And on that note, even if you don't agree with this issue, if you do feel like your voice is, you want to join the conversation, this doesn't have to end with this show. You can feel free to message us anytime on Facebook, especially and join the conversation. And possibly we can invite you to the radio studio so you can join the conversation. We can have very much better interactivity.
Absolutely.
So
again, this is 95.9 KRFF LP, Moorhead, Fargo. That's the call station number. Are we wrapping this up? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. There seemed to be an air of us not knowing what we were going to be doing.
I knew what I was doing.